The most notable thing to me, and Jeremy, I want you to explain what it is we heard, is the absence of Jalen Hurts. I'm old enough to remember when Jalen Hurts was about to become the best quarterback in the NFL. That was, I don't know, 365 days ago today. It feels like years, but it was a year ago today. Jalen Hurts was as ascending a player as you could possibly be. He was on the verge of winning MVP and all the rest of that. Now he's not even in the top 10. What can you tell us?
Injuries and bad offense, Greeny, was pretty simple. You know, executives pointed out to me that Jalen Hurts did not look right last year. The Eagles could downplay whatever knee issues he was dealing with in season. Wasn't even really on the injury report in some cases, but they felt like he just wasn't moving the same. Couldn't do that dual threat ability that he's so good at with the offense. And then Nick Sirianni's attack with Philly last year was just not very good. I mean, they were in a situation where they kind of rolled the ball out, tried to do what they did the year before. Teams adjusted. Eagles didn't evolve, so Hurts was in a position where he just wasn't highlighted. I will point out that a lot of voters say, even though he's very good, he's never really going to be a top 5 quarterback in the eyes of a lot of evaluators. They say he's sort of in that 7 to 13 range, depending on how he does that year.
Yeah, Robert looks disgusted, so I'm coming to you in a second. Let me put the quote up very quickly, though. One NFC executive, if we can plate that up there, said he was playing hurt. The Eagles tried to downplay that, but he didn't look right. He wasn't the same runner he was in the past, and passing the ball was tough for him. For whatever it's worth, we said that all year long. Robert, why do you have that look on your face as we talk about Jalen?
Well, it's not just about Jalen, it's about the list in general. You know, I think maybe the fans at home need to understand, or maybe I need to understand, that this is a projection forward from these execs of what they think these quarterbacks are going to do this year. But when it comes to Jalen Hurts specifically, his running ability is part of his ability to play quarterback. So in some instances, these scouts and these execs are still evaluating quarterbacks based off of 10, 15 years ago when it was Peyton Manning and Tom Brady back there sitting in the pocket picking teams apart. Jalen Hurts' running ability makes him a top 5 quarterback potentially. He was not a top 5 quarterback last year. I agree with that. But with 2 number 1 wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and then Dallas Goedert, I think he'll get back on track and put himself back in the trajectory of being a top 5, top 10.
Okay, so this is going to be an interesting one because Jalen Hurts really does keep floating around. And I really think that Jalen Hurts is in a lose-lose situation because Jalen Hurts, maybe by some media members, but a lot of people, when Jalen Hurts even went to the Super Bowl, he got the Brock Purdy treatment. They pretty much just said, this is the roster. This is a stacked roster. You know, like, of course he's going to be good. Right? Even other players around the NFL were saying things like that. And then when the Eagles, who seemingly have a good roster, play poorly, they then blame Jalen Hurts. And it's kind of like, well, if Jalen Hurts was to blame for why they didn't play well, then why didn't he get any of the praise for when they did play well and went to the Super Bowl and he balled out? And so that's where the confusion from my standpoint lies. Because if we're going to use that same criteria to say that Jalen Hurts is a big fundamental reason why that Eagles offense played poorly, then you better give him the praise for when he balled out. But that's not what they're doing. So right now it feels like this. Jalen Hurts gets into the league, has like a slower uprise, right? You know, he didn't splash like maybe some of these other quarterbacks did, but still got the Eagles to the playoffs. That was without a doubt, objectively and subjectively, not on a stacked team. They lost to Tampa Bay, and then the following year they balled out, went to the Super Bowl, of course, lost, and then you had this last season where then he did not play well. And so now it seems like they said, well, Jalen Hurts wasn't really that good when he entered the league. And then, oh my God, they played unbelievable, but it was just because his team's so amazing. And then they played poorly this last season, and they're like, well, see, Jalen Hurts isn't that good. And so that's why so many of the maybe casual fan, casual media member, whatever it may be, sees Jalen as like, not that special. Yeah, he's a quarterback. The Philadelphia Eagles are a great team, a greatly run franchise, right? They're consistently competitive for literal decades. Our second or third highest in playoff wins since like 2000, right? Like they are consistently a top level team, whether you're the biggest Eagles hater or not. It's just a fact. And so they're just kind of like, yeah, Jalen Hurts is just part of that machine. He's a good quarterback, but like he's not the heart and soul of that team. And that's what we expect our quarterbacks to be when ranking them top 5, top 10, whatever it may be. Patrick Mahomes is the heart and soul of the Chiefs. Josh Allen is the heart and soul of the Bills. They're seen as the engine. The casual fan and the media members do not see Jalen Hurts as the engine. That's why they also don't see Brock Purdy as the engine for the 49ers. And so we kind of continue, and you can also see Tua's not on there as well. And so that's where Jalen Hurts is now. And I think it's a combination between his size, and this is not what I'm saying, what I think is accurate, but this is what I think the perception is. I'm talking about specifically about the perception. People see the size of him, and they talk about him running like he is this massive dual threat quarterback, like he is kind of like Lamar Jackson-esque, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. I don't think the running is as big of a part of his game as people think it is. It's obviously part of his game, but it's not what truly makes him special necessarily, because I think because of that, people kind of do stereotype Jalen Hurts in that regard and don't really actually give him the credit that he's deserved for his passing abilities. He is a fantastic pocket passer. I mean, he does unbelievably tight window throws. Like, so he is great at that. So this idea that he's not that he kind of just like relies on kind of running around, or the tush push gets completely blown out of proportion. People think that that's like all he can do, and it's just not accurate. It's not actually accurately portraying what Jalen Hurts can do. And I've said this a lot, but just go watch the highlights of the Super Bowl. That game encapsulates exactly what Jalen Hurts can do. He can buy time in the pocket. He can make some of the most ridiculously hard throws that you could ever see a quarterback do. And he can run. And he can, muscle his way in, into for some yards. Like, he can just do anything that you ask a quarterback to do. And if that's the case, then why are you pulling him down in the rankings? Why are you saying that he's not great? Why are you saying that he's not the heart and soul of that Eagles team? Like, what is it then? If he can do everything on the field and do everything at a great level, why are you saying that he's not a great quarterback then? And I think that therein lies the problem. And it's just not fair when we're talking about it in the regards, because again, I understand why you're going to put like a Josh Allen ahead of him. And obviously, of course, like a Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen is a big, strong beast, right? Like, his impact on the field is inevitable and undeniable. The guy takes up half the screen just watching it. Jalen Hurts just takes up less space, so we perceive him as having a less impact. And to me, that's kind of part of the problem. Same thing with Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy was like 6'5", 250, better believe that they would probably give him more credit. But he's also a smaller guy. So we see these smaller guys as like having less impact on the team. And I get it to a degree, but I just don't think. I think it's more of a mind trick than anything else. And again, he was hurt last year. So why aren't we giving him the benefit of the doubt? Well, we know he's great, but he was hurt. And yet he still helped get that team to the playoffs, right? Like, he still played good enough to lead the Eagles to the playoffs. And yet somehow that's not a great feat with a terrible OC who was fired, with a disastrous no defense at all. They had like the bottom 3, bottom 4, bottom 5 defense in the NFL. And yet he was still able to get them into the playoffs, beat the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champions, right? Beat the Buffalo Bills. So I think really also what really hurt Jalen Hurts and the Eagles' perception was also losing to the Cowboys and losing to the 49ers. And people saw that as like, see, he's not good. But to me, and I will give RG3 credit here, because he is being consistent, because he's kind of defended Lamar Jackson as well. To me, though, it seems like a lot of media members, especially for Jalen Hurts, look for reasons why he's not great, rather than looking for reasons why he is actually great. There's no defense of him in the media of what happened last season. They just think that he should have somehow played even better and jumped off the screen even more while he was truly injured and had a truly awfully run offense that was no fault of his own, as well as a terrible defense. And yet he's somehow supposed to play better, even though they got to the playoffs, and yet he was somehow supposed to win, I guess, like multiple playoff games? Like, is that would have then people would have said, wow, Jalen Hurts really is him if he did that? Because I don't know a lot of quarterbacks who could do that. Patrick Mahomes wasn't winning the Super Bowl if they had the same defense as the Eagles, Patrick Mahomes isn't getting even out of the wild card round. That's a fact. Let alone winning the divisional round or the AFC or the Super Bowl. So I just don't understand exactly what they expect Jalen Hurts to be able to do under those circumstances to give him any type of the benefit of the doubt. And I think he does deserve that grace, which is what RG3 did say about specifically Lamar Jackson now, about offering him the grace. But it seems these days that unless a quarterback wins 2-3 Super Bowls or is a physical freak like, say, a Josh Allen, or has an unbelievable arm like a Herbert or a Joe Burrow, we just are so quick to bury these quarterbacks who just don't seem to look physically at a distance as impressive as some of the other ones. And I think we do a great disservice because of that. So I really think that Jalen Hurts will have a huge bounce back year. It's really not that interesting to me to keep debating who's a top 5, who's a top 10 quarterback. Honestly, I'd rather do hypotheticals of if we put Jalen Hurts on the Chiefs, would they win the Super Bowl? To me, that's actually more interesting and more telling rather than trying to figure out who's the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. And we love to have these debates until we're blue in the face, and it's just it's just so largely nonsense to me. I mean, I'll still do it and still have it because people obviously like it. To me personally, I don't get the lure in having these conversations every 5 seconds personally. I actually, like I said, prefer the hypotheticals. They're more interesting. It's a fun thought experiment to me. But just kind of comparing these quarterbacks in isolation where they're coming from completely different coaches, completely different rosters, completely different offensive identities, it's just bizarre. And again, when he said, oh, why did people rate, Jalen Hurts so much lower? They're like, oh, well, because he was hurt and that offense, was not good. And it's like, okay, but that wasn't Jalen Hurts' fault. If Patrick Mahomes, got hurt and injured his leg, or Josh Allen or Joe Burrow has been hurt as well. Joe Burrow actually is the best example of that. Joe Burrow has been hurt. Why is he not then yanked down? Why does someone like a Joe Burrow get given the benefit of the doubt, even though he's been injured multiple times, while Jalen Hurts played way better in the Super Bowl, and it's not even close than Joe Burrow ever did? I'm kind of mad that it took me 12 minutes to even come up with that. To me, that's perfect example right there. Why are we giving Joe Burrow the benefit of the doubt and not Jalen Hurts? And again, if there's you can do that, but you have to give me an actual reason why. You can't just say that. The logic has to be sound. I'm not arguing that Jalen Hurts is better than Joe Burrow, but you have to tell me why you're penalizing Jalen Hurts for the same things of Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow is not being penalized for it. I'm not saying that Joe Burrow, even with those penalties, still wouldn't be a top 3, top 5, top 10 quarterback. But it's just you can't pick and choose when you want to apply that criteria. That is the argument that I'm trying to make more than anything. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? Do you think Jalen Hurts is an actual top 10, top 5 quarterback? Or do you think it makes sense that he's actually kind of fallen out of there? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.